Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Bank of America, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Antares Investment Partners, Arbor Realty Trust, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Helmsley Spear, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Jackson Development Group, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moynihan Organization, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Sutphin Properties, the Wickoff Organization, Extreme Construction and Deconstruction.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. They call it Long Island. I think it was created, potato fields. I'm not sure, but I got people over here who know everything about Long Island. And there's developments taking place, and there's offices. But what's happening during this credit crunch, during this crisis, during a little economic difficulties in Long Island? Today I have three wonderful individuals who will tell us their perspectives of what's happening in Long Island. My guests include Michael Shore, Executive Vice President of the Tree Line Companies, Kevin Davis, partner at Apollo Real Estate Advisors, and last but not least, Mitchell Reckler, managing partner at Reckler Equity Partners, also R Square.
That's right.
Correct. So, in reality, I think you're not the oldest. You may be the oldest, but
I think I am the oldest.
Okay, your grandfather was probably one of the pioneers in Long Island.
That's right.
Well, what did he do originally? Because I know going through the Reckler website and other things that you were originally in Brooklyn and some of the developments in the Flatlands area and East. How did they go out to Long Island?
My grandfather, as you said, he developed in Maspeth the first planned industrial park in New York City. And after he was done with that, him and his partner at the time, Walter Gross, were looking for another large industrial development. And this was the early 60s. And they decided, after spending a lot of time, they went out to Hauppauge, they met the supervisor there, and they were able to purchase roughly 1,200 acres from ITT to develop industrial.
I mean, this was really pioneering. I mean, at that time, the Long Island Expressway didn't even go out that far. I don't know where it stopped.
Yeah, the Long Island Expressway, I don't
probably
think
stopped
even went...
at, maybe, at Lake Success.
No, I think the expressway went as far as Route 110 at the time, so it was absolutely pioneering. But they forged forward, they developed this plan. At the time it was the largest industrial park in the country. Today it's the second largest in the country next to Silicon Valley. And they developed a portion of it. They started to sell off to other developers in the area and pieces of it. And over the course of the following 30 years, over 10 million square feet were developed there.
Right, but that's the Suffolk County. I mean, the majority of your property is in Nassau County. I mean, Long Island is broken down into, Nassau is the closest, Suffolk is the furthest, and as we were saying prior to the show, the big problem for certain things is Nassau County has certain financial difficulties, would you say?
Well, they've had a history of financial difficulties going way back, and I think the big issue that we're facing as office owners in Nassau County, where the bulk of our Long Island portfolio is a tremendous real estate tax burden, and I think that's being felt obviously in the residential world also, but as office owners, I think that the county has sort of taken a tack over the past at least 5 years of trying to balance a lot of its financial problems off the backs of real estate taxes, and we've seen very dramatic increases in real estate taxes every year.
So how do you keep tenants?
Well, it's just it's a function of supply and demand. However, you know, to kind of further the comment on the taxes, we bought a building in Nassau County in Hicksville, and we actually bought it. It's very difficult to fight Nassau County on your tax assessments, and it was actually assessed at a value that was 30% higher than where we purchased the property. So I think it's a great example of how difficult it is. However, tenants still want to be in Nassau County.
So what are the, you know, you're talking industrial, you also have office space.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about office space. I mean, you've had two major properties in Nassau County. 1111 Marcus Avenue in Lake Success.
Right.
And then the other former, manufacturers Hanover property on 100 Duffy.
100 Duffy Avenue.
Okay, in Hicksville. What does an Apollo go to Nassau County?
For several reasons. You know, one thing that interests us about Nassau County is, one, the proximity to New York City. Nassau County and Suffolk County used to really be just a bedroom community for New York, and over time that's really changed. And Nassau County has an extremely wealthy, extremely highly educated population. And if you look at the two counties side by side, Nassau County has, I think it's about 300 square miles. Suffolk County is about 900 square miles. The density is threefold in Nassau County. So you have an extremely dense population. That's something like 5,000 people per square mile. That puts it among the most densely populated areas in the country. And you have a very dedicated population that wants to be there. So what we started finding was, we purchased 1111 Marcus Avenue in 2000, and what we found, it's a 1.4 million square foot former industrial facility that we redeveloped into an office building effectively. And one thing that we were able to offer tenants at 1111 Marcus Avenue was large blocks of space. And we started to see the demand for large blocks of space in Long Island become, much, much stronger over time. Whereas historically, Long Island's been a small tenant market, where I think on average, the tenant size is certainly under 30,000 square feet. Yeah. So what we saw with Hicksville was the demand for large blocks of space. So we were able to buy a vacant 425,000 square foot complex and offer spaces that didn't exist to tenants.
And you can't forget also that Long Island is such an infill market. You are not going to see, you will never see significant development happening again on Long Island that really has any type of effect to the overall gross square footage.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a few different things. First of all, there's not a lot of available land for development, as we all know. In addition, just going through the approval process, even if you have something, and fortunate enough, is an extremely long and arduous task, and it has generally dissuaded investors and developers to purchase anything and go through the process. It's very difficult. So that being said, having, owning real estate, even in Nassau County with the headaches that we all go through, you still know that the tenants really aren't going anywhere because they're servicing the local community. And you're not going to have to worry about additional product being added into the market. So you're just dealing with the normal economic cycles of both Long Island and the country.
But as we were saying prior to the show, isn't that a little bit like going into New Jersey, where certain large owners of office buildings, compete with their friends, and basically the only guy who's going to make money is the leasing broker? Because
I actually can't really disagree with that much. There's not a tremendous amount of organic growth. I think it's very much like what Mitch said, that, Long Island, Nassau County in particular, it's service industries, and there's a lot of trading tenants around between buildings. Certainly tenants expand and requirements expand, but it's regional offices of major corporations and local businesses. And just, sort of to echo another point, why there isn't any development even were land available, we're not seeing rents that would justify new construction based on what construction costs are today. Just sort of, ballpark, at least on one of our properties, we have excess building rights that would allow us to build a 200,000 square foot building on the site, and we have not really taken advantage of that to this point, because our rough estimate is telling us that rents need to crack $40 a square foot before it pays to put a shovel in the ground. I think the most recent sort of building that was built on speculation was built by the Weir Group in Jericho, on a piece of land that they had owned for generations, very literally. So they had no money in the dirt.
And what are they paying? What are the rents being?
I think they're getting low 30s, but for them, when they had nothing in the dirt, essentially, they have the adjacent property.
So let's look at some. We talk about New York City rent. You have an office here in Manhattan, and you have an office up in Suffolk County. What's your rent in Manhattan per square foot?
I was fortunate enough that I had that.
But if you were renting today?
Well, renting today would probably be about $75, $80 a foot.
$75, $80 a foot. Now, there's nothing in Nassau or Suffolk County. Why don't people who live in Nassau County want to be in Nassau County?
A lot too. I think there's actually I read a statistic years ago, and I'm not sure if it's perfectly accurate, but something like 60% of the people who live on Long Island actually work on Long Island. So there's a tremendous number of people who do. This sort of myth of everyone on Long Island waking up and trucking out to the Long Island Railroad every single morning is really not the case.
Steve Roth a couple of years ago spoke at a symposium, and he said 40 years ago, everybody wanted to go to the suburbs. Today, people want to come back to the city. They want to, and we've seen that at Apollo, we've seen it other places. If those people come back to the city, is this going to have an effect on the office market in Nassau County?
No, I think it really goes back to what I said. The majority of the businesses that are out on Long Island are servicing the 3 million plus people who are living on Long Island.
But you did bring up prior to the show that with the credit crisis and the mortgage companies, it's like Long Beach, California. You got a couple of these companies out of business now.
Yeah, but at the same time, because it's such a diverse tenant base on Long Island, and if you guys disagree with me, let me know, it's not going to have a significant impact to the availability. Between Delta funding and American Home Mortgage, and there'll be a couple others. If it affects 1 or 2% of the vacancy rate, I think that would be a lot.
So let's leave Nassau for a second, and let's go to that 900. You said 900?
Yeah, about 900 square miles.
900 square miles in Suffolk County. And now, all of a sudden, you've been in there in Suffolk County. You go out and you're going to go to Calverton, where they built F-14s? What are you doing in Calverton?
Well, it goes back again.
For my audience, Calverton's in Suffolk County, near Riverhead, right?
That's correct.
Near Tanger Outlet Mall, and on the way to the Hamptons.
Yeah, I think what you say, Michael, is true. It's really the final frontier of Long Island. It was an opportunity for us to develop several million square feet, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million square feet of industrial property, where there is no opportunity that is like that or will ever be like that again.
Will there be a desire or a need for that?
That'll be the challenge. The answer is we believe so, given the fact that we have 6 million square feet of industrial space, and we do see certain tenants growing. It'll allow us to offer something to those tenants who are willing to make the move. It is so hard for any tenant who is looking for upwards of above 100,000 square feet of industrial space to find anything. There are a few blocks, and generally speaking, most of it isn't new, higher quality industrial space.
But isn't industrial normally, near trains or highways?
Well, we are going to be 5 minutes off the Long Island Expressway, very close. We also are looking into the property adjoins a 10,000 linear foot runway, and we are hoping to work with the town of Riverhead to take advantage of that and find tenants who would like to take advantage of it.
Now, speaking of Riverhead, you're going into Riverhead. What are you going to do in Riverhead? I mean,
We're in
most
Riverhead.
people know Riverhead. You go around that circle, which at times at the wrong time of the day could kill you. 2 hours around the circle, and then the main thing in Riverhead is Splish Splash, right? Off the
Splish Splash.
Splish Splash and Tanger Outlet Mall. What are you
Right.
doing there?
Well, the North Fork of Long Island has changed immensely, I think, over the last 10 years. A great example of that, Tanger Outlet Centers, as you mentioned. Tanger Outlet Centers gets somewhere between 10 and 12 million visitors per year. So it's massive amounts of shoppers that come to Riverhead, and it's one of the best performing outlet centers in the country. On top of that, you have tourist destinations on the North Fork that just, quite frankly, don't exist anywhere else on the northern seaboard. The wine country on the North Fork is something that over the last, I'd say really 5 years has really come into fruition, but has been around for quite a while, but is really becoming more and more popular exponentially each year. That coupled with what's happened on the South Fork, with the Hamptons continuing to get better, and more and more people buying second homes, and more of those second homes becoming really full year-round homes instead of just summer shacks, if you want to call them that. Most of them are hardly shacks. So we see a lot of demand in Riverhead. And if you look at Route 58, which is really the prime retail corridor in Riverhead, it's got every major retailer there.
It makes the entrance of the Long Island Expressway from the Queens Midtown Tunnel a sweet ride. Route 58 is the worst road in the world.
It's hard.
I mean, I try to go out with my wife in October to the wine country, exactly what you said. I passed the Tanger Outlet, and it was an October day, and we couldn't go 2 miles. It was the worst 45 minutes or an hour. I mean, that road is...
And that was in October. In the summertime, it's even worse. You have more shoppers there. What we saw in downtown Riverhead is the opportunity to really create a downtown environment that's viable. And Riverhead has grown immensely over the last, it's called 5, 7, 10 years. However, downtown Riverhead has pretty much remained static. So the town of Riverhead put out an RFP, request for proposal, to redevelop downtown Riverhead, and we were awarded the right and nominated as the master developer for downtown. And we're going through the process right now of trying to acquire additional properties in downtown. We own one building, which is the former Woolworth building, the corner of East Avenue and East Main Street, which will likely be the first phase in the development. And it's going to have...
Riverhead has great potential. I mean, you have the water over there. They've fixed the bay over there, the dock, the aquarium. There are certain major amenities. Now, would you think of... You're in the office business. I mean, Mitchell and Kevin are in a diverse number of businesses. Do you think you'd ever look in the Riverhead area? There are limited offices to buy an office.
Quite honestly, not today. I think that the market has a long way to come. Our model is that we tend to like to look in central business districts and in more developed markets. And our feeling is that those markets are probably 5+ years from maturing. So hopefully these guys will do a good job, and then there'll be an opportunity for us to come in.
But in the same manner that Mitchell and I think Kevin and you even said before, people do work and live in Riverhead, and they live nearby, and they have jobs. I think the headquarters of Pulte is right off the expressway on like exit 69, exit 65. There are companies who have relocated their headquarters. I mean, they haven't gone out that far to Riverhead yet.
It's going to be a long process. It will happen, but to tell you the truth, I think to say that it'll happen in 10 years is being somewhat ambitious and optimistic.
Now, aren't you doing something else in the island near the Hamptons?
Yeah, well, we have, we're in our early approval stages, but we're working on, we bought the old CPI Canoe Place Inn, which is a club in Hampton Bays, right on the canal, and where...
I mean, Kevin can't go there anymore then.
And we're working on developing a 75-unit private residence club that will have all of the services and amenities of a 5-star hotel, but it's fractional ownership where people would be owning 1/8 shares over the course of the year. And we're very excited about it, but we're only in the approval stages.
We're not really talking about office, but if you're in a 24/7 community, which Nassau and Suffolk County is, retail, and in Nassau County, where you are, Garden City, it's like the retail hub. I mean, you want to talk about Old Country Road is as bad as Route 58.
Not quite, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, but I mean, the amount of retail business in the old Westbury, in that neighborhood, is fantastic. I mean, but a couple of shows ago, your partner in in the Arches, which is an interesting project, I had him and also Ken Breslin of Breslin saying, you can't get approvals. And I just heard this with approvals. How difficult is it to get approvals for like a retail complex or something like that? Is it a nightmare?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I think you're fortunate if something takes 3 years. I think you have to expand your time horizons and have the patience. It requires not just dealing with the government, but dealing with the civic groups and sitting down with them and explaining to them. We like to take the grassroots approach, and you have to have patience and staying power. Nothing happens overnight.
It's really interesting. You bring up the community boards and the civic group. I think it was Ed Blumenfeld who said that they brought in a cricket or something, to the meeting, saying, the endangered species, this little cricket will no longer be over here if you build the shopping center, and that's the same problem that you have all around.
Yeah, I mean, that's very commonplace throughout both Suffolk and Nassau County, that getting the approvals and entitlements for a project, even if it's as of right, is difficult. What you really have to create is a win-win situation, one that the town, both the politicians in the town and the citizens in the town, are both in favor for.
But that's very interesting, especially with Calverton and Riverhead. I mean, before the Tanger Mall, you had people living out there, but you had nothing. I mean, there was no retail. I mean, since that time, I think Steve Ross might have been involved with it, and some other people that they built that second shopping center on Route 58. And now they're building some additional shopping centers on 58. So there's a definite need. I mean, Jeff File talks about he owns the Kmart Plaza, which really is no longer Kmart. It's a BJ on 58 in Riverhead, and it's a great store. I mean, people from the Hamptons run over there. It's a dynamic store.
Yeah, no, that whole retail corridor is absolutely accessed by the Summering Hampton community, and that whole, I call it summer, but the truth is it's become less seasonal and more year-round, because you have more and more people here living in Manhattan who are out there on the weekends, no matter what time of year it is. So that retail gets good demand, and there is a growing full-time population in the whole Riverhead, Calverton, eastern Suffolk County area.
I think one of the biggest problems that you have in both Nassau, Suffolk, is this question of affordable housing. And I know that there's this project that we briefly discussed before that may happen in, in Hempstead, which is talking about workforce housing. And this workforce housing is a big problem. Because let's say you have that 25-year-old who's now working in that office company, or has a job. There's no housing.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest problem hitting Nassau and Suffolk County, the housing problem of the young people. Otherwise, they can't stay in the.
No, it's absolutely a huge problem, and it's not just the office worker. We're talking about teachers, local policemen, young people who have been essentially living in their parents' home. If they want to stay on Long Island, that's their only choice. And we're actually working on a project in Selden right now through R Squared that would be a workforce housing project. And the good news is...
could you explain that for my audience? I think that's a very interesting point. What is that project?
Well, the project, again,
the type of
it's primarily a workforce housing project with a component of retail.
Now, what do you mean by workforce housing?
There are actually, just like there's affordable housing standards, there are separate workforce housing
through the Long
standards.
Island Housing Partnership. Am I correct?
That's absolutely right. We're working with the Long Island Housing Partnership, and it's not the same as affordable housing, but it will allow generally one bedroom and small 2-bedroom apartments that will enable young people who are entering the workforce in some form or another to afford to live on Long Island, to purchase. That's correct.
I mean, because there are limited number, I think more in the Suffolk County, more residential rentals that you might be able to, I've seen, in certain parts of Suffolk County. Not that many, but I think
there's a shortage of that as well. But our project is not that. But we're excited about it. The good news is that both the town and Suffolk County officials are very excited about it as well, and we're moving forward to get approvals on it.
So we don't have much time. If you had to give it, what's the future look like in a quick 5-second, 10-second for Nassau County and Suffolk County? Michael?
Well, I would say that the future is bright. We have a strong market where we have consistent tenancy and consistent access to quality tenants and rising rents.
I'd agree with you. I think Nassau County has an extremely bright future, and I think Suffolk County is going to continually improve over time.
I think Suffolk County has a little bit better future. I think Long Island in general will go through its cycles, of which this will be a little bit of a down cycle, but given the population and density, it will continue.
I'd like to thank Michael Shore, Kevin Davis, and Mitch Reckler for being here. Next week, we change our focus and we talk with these prominent REIT people saying what's happening in the world of REITs. See you next week.
Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, Bank of America, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Antares Investment Partners, Arbor Realty Trust, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Helmsley Spear, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Jackson Development Group, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moynihan Organization, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney Fettner Associates, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Sutphin Properties, the Wyckoff Organization, Extreme Construction and Deconstruction.